Good afternoon and welcome to our CityWater webinar. Today we will introduce the new version of CityWater that we hope to release later this fall. And we'll also provide a brief overview for those of you who are joining us that are new to CityWater. My name is Nathan Swain and I'm the lead developer of CityWater here at Aquaveo. And I'm joined in the studio by our partner from Hanson, Allen & Luce, Steve Jones. We'll also be helped out today by John Hutt, our head of sales and marketing at Aquaveo. He'll be monitoring the chat and our email during the webinar. And I'd also like to acknowledge Alan Zundel for his contributions to helping develop CityWater to what it is today. I have a few logistics to cover before we dive into our presentation. If you're new to YouTube Live, you can comment and chat throughout the presentation using the chat window that's on the right side of the video screen. You'll need to be logged in with a YouTube account to be able to use this feature, but the login is not required to watch the presentation. If you can't log in with YouTube, you can still post questions using our info@aquaveo.com email address. We'll be monitoring both, and as I said before, John will be compiling those into a document for us to review at the end of our presentation. However, I would encourage you to post the questions as we go through the presentation because there is a bit of a delay that will make it difficult for us to answer them in real time. And we encourage questions. So now I'll turn it over to Steve to give us an overview of CityWater.
Thanks, Nathan. So I'm an engineer that have been working with water modeling for over 20 years. And a couple years ago, I was looking for a solution to bring the power of hydraulic modeling to water systems. And Nathan, he proposed a solution through CityWater, an app, an online web app that can deliver hydraulic modeling in an easy-to-use platform. So I'll go over a few key features and advantages of CityWater. So first key feature has to do with maximizing your modeling investment. So hydraulic models usually get built through the process of master planning. And there's a lot of effort and money involved in creating a master plan. And one of the key outputs from master planning is a report that usually goes on the shelf, and then a hydraulic model that sometimes also unfortunately goes on the shelf. And so CityWater brings a platform that brings the model to more people in an organization to make it a live tool instead of a model that gets put on the shelf or only a few people get to use. So another key advantage of CityWater is that like I said, it brings the power of hydraulic modeling to more people. So with CityWater, it allows you to ask the important question, look inside your system, and make you look smart by understanding and giving good answers and making good decisions about your system, whether that's routine operations or whether that's running fire flow scenarios, other scenarios, changing demands, upgrades to your system. It helps you become familiar with your system and make those good decisions. So the next advantage is empowering everyone in your organization. So because you're able to simply provide the power of the model to more people in your organization, more people can take advantage of that, whether that's from administration to engineers to operators and even secretary and other support staff. A good example of CityWater is in some systems I've seen where secretaries will use the model to answer questions, for instance, about pressure. They get numerous calls about pressure in the system, and the secretaries can handle that by zooming into the customer's location and giving them relevant and accurate information about pressure at their location. So it really brings a powerful tool to decision makers to, again, make you look smart and be able to answer questions related to the system. So fourth and final advantage I wanted to bring up is convenience. So it's a subscription-based access that works on most devices and most operating systems. There's no installation required. You only need a web address, a web browser, and you can upload any EPANet input file and then easily access within minutes your model. Last thing I want to talk about is just a few advanced EPANet features or capabilities in CityWater. So once you have it uploaded into the system, it actually creates a schematic of your system that you can use to quickly understand and identify key components of your system and your model. And then it can execute powerful post-processing algorithms to identify inefficiencies or issues in your model. One of those could be highlighting locations of energy waste in your system, and then you're able to fine-tune your system beyond just understanding your system. And then it also allows for understanding of unfamiliar systems or new models in a fraction of the time. So some really good key features of CityWater. And now I want to turn the time back over to Nathan, and he's going to talk about the latest release of CityWater.
Great, thanks, Steve. So with our new release, the biggest change, most significant change that we've made is that we have a new pricing model. And there were a number of motivations that I guess encouraged us to change the pricing model. So first of all, if you're not familiar, the old pricing model included 4 license tiers: standard, advanced, professional, and enterprise, each having an increasing number of features that were enabled. And each license was a fixed price, regardless of the size of the system. So some of the motivations for why we wanted to change from this system are that, for one, CityWater is server software, meaning we need to account on our end for the computing resources that are being used, whether it be the processing power or the memory or the disk space. And the fixed price model didn't sufficiently account for the differences in the server resources being used by the varying sizes of models. And this ultimately wouldn't be sustainable because we wouldn't be able to account for, basically upgrade our hardware with more and more models appropriately. We also discovered that the fixed price system, although it was very simple to determine what the price of the software was cost prohibitive for many of our smaller systems. They just weren't able to afford this single set price. And our ultimate goal was to make CityWater affordable for everyone. So the changes that we made is, first, we simplified the license model. So instead of 4 licenses, we now have a base package of core components that's priced based on the size of the model, and then you can pick and choose from a series of add-ons that add different features, such as fire flow analysis or scenario analysis. This allows you to mix and match and purchase only the features that your organization needs and not pay for the things that you are not necessarily interested in. Now, the base license fee, as I mentioned, is based on the model size. And we did a lot of research and looked at a lot of different scenarios for how we could do this. As we looked out at similar software, we found that they used a tiered approach, meaning that once the model grew past a certain number of pipes, there was a cutoff and you'd be bumped into the next tier, which would significantly or often increase your price significantly. The unintended consequence of this type of pricing is that a lot of modelers would end up skeletonizing their models to get below, the arbitrary threshold. And we really didn't like that the pricing of software that's used for modeling would influence how modelers use their software. So for our pricing model, we made it a point to make sure that there were no tiers and no big jumps in pricing. So instead, we charge per pipe basis, meaning that we count up all the pipes and there's essentially a cost per pipe. And ultimately, while your price will go up as your model increases, it won't jump significantly. If you add 30 pipes, it's only going to add $30 or $40 to your price, for example. And in fact, we also built in a discount that as the number of pipes increases, the price per pipe drops, so that as the model gets bigger, you'll actually be paying less per pipe. So that's our new pricing model. This does make it a little tricky to figure out what the cost of your model is. So we also developed on our website a calculator that can be used to calculate the price. And it's pretty simple to use. You just enter the number of pipes for your model, or an estimate if you're not certain, and then pick the packages that you want, and it calculates the price. Another thing that kind of goes along with this tool is now you can actually add it to the cart right on the website, and then we'll have someone contact you to get things going. So overall, the pricing model has made it easier and hopefully more affordable for more customers to be able to afford CityWater. And we've made it easier for you to get going with CityWater as well. We also have made a number of feature improvements and bug fixes. So in terms of the feature improvements, one thing that was kind of deficient, I guess, is that the head layer and node layers were symbolized originally using a hard-coded color ramp from 1,000 feet to 4,000 feet, regardless of the range of the actual values in the head layer, or for nodes, the elevation layer. This results in the layers being symbolized as a solid color, as you can see, which is not very interesting or particularly useful if you're trying to determine any information by just looking at this. So in our new release, these color ramps are now dynamically generated for each model, so that you can see the full range of values visualized on the nodes. Okay, another relatively minor improvement, but just helps the, ambiance of CityWater, is we have new uniform, kind of streamlined buttons for our tools. Icons for the buttons. Again, they behave the same, so there's not really a change in functionality, but it just kind of unifies the interface and makes it a little nicer to look at. We fixed quite a few bugs in this next release. One that probably many of you encountered, if you try to download an image from the plot using the little hamburger menu in the right, the loading bar would appear and it would not disappear, which means you'd have to refresh the page to start using CityWater again. Wasn't really, a game breaker, but it definitely was an annoyance. So we've now fixed that. Another somewhat big change, or big bug, was the animating feature was not properly showing the data from scenarios. So for instance, if you changed which node you were doing a trace on, it would still animate the base model and not show you the change that you just made, which was really frustrating. So we've now addressed that and fixed that. Another thing that we fixed, in addition to the loading bar not going away, we also fixed Sorry, I'm a little behind. For those of you who are using the schematic view, we made quite a few bug fixes as well. For one, there was a particularly tricky bug. If you had an outlier, say like a zero elevation in your elevation or head, our zoom algorithm would not be able to handle it, and you get something looking like this with just a single line across, and you couldn't zoom to the extent. It was very frustrating. So we now corrected that to kind of ignore those outliers and zoom to a majority of the model. Also, in the kind of pipes information or the nodes information that was displayed, if you were using millions of gallons per day, say for flow, there were not enough significant digits often to show you what those actual values are. So now we detect when it's in millions of gallons per day and show an appropriate number of significant digits. And then finally, this is a bug that actually wasn't user reported, but we discovered some of the nodes on the schematic graph were not being properly plotted at the right elevation or head when you had it pinned by head or elevation. So we've now fixed that, and it is accurate. So the final bug fixes have to do with our tools. In addition to the animation tool not working correctly, the color ramps for the layers in our scenarios were also incorrect in general. So the layers for your scenario runs were not displaying the proper symbology. Also, in the Fireflow tool, there's the time drop down. If you had a model that had more than 24 hours of simulation time, like maybe a 36-hour model run, and you tried to select, say, hour 27, you would get an error when you run the Fireflow tool. It would not allow any, or it would allow you to select them, but would not run with any times greater than 24 hours. So we've now fixed that so you can pick any of the times in the range, even if it's greater than 24 hours. And then finally, when you're running scenarios, we noticed that the run button was still showing, which we didn't really want you to be able to start another run while one was running. That could mess things up. So we've taken care of that so that it's hidden. And that's most of what we had in our next release. Again, that will be coming out later this fall, either this month or next month. And we will send an email to current customers letting you know when that update has posted. So now we'd like to have a little bit of a question and answer period. And as I said, we've had John monitoring the chat and kind of compiling questions for us. So I'll go ahead and look at that document where he's been compiling those. And it looks like we have one question is, how much would it cost for a system with about 2,000 pipes? Okay, so that's a good question. So let me pull up our website. So if you navigate to aquaveo.com and you visit the CityWater product page, which is down here, you'll see a description of the product, but if you click on this link here in the top right for pricing, then you'll see the page that I had a screenshot of in the presentation. So to get to the calculator, you can click on Configure. And again, you just enter the number of pipes. So the question was 2,000 pipes. Okay, and then I guess that will be your base price there. And then you have to decide which add-ons you want. So the core components will give you basically a read-only view of the model. So if you want to do something like Fireflow analysis or scenario management, which are our two most popular set of features, you just add those on. So the answer to that question would be for 2,000 pipes with scenario and fire flow, be about $3,000. And that is annually. So it is a subscription. Okay. So let me go back to our question stock. Okay, we have another question. How does CityWater differ from products like WaterDems or InfoWater? And I'll let Steve answer this one.
So CityWater, like we explained in the webinar, is I guess a simpler version of modeling. It focuses on accessibility and being able to access the data from the model and to ask the model questions that help in daily routine in a water system employees' job. So the more powerful models you would use to create the model in the first place. So CityWater is not necessarily for creating the model from scratch. It's more of a tool that you use after the model has been created. So I'd call it the main difference. It's simpler, focused on easier to use, and not necessarily used to build the model in the first place.
Great. All right, so another question that we have that came in is how many users can I have? So in previous versions of CityWater, we didn't have a user limit, but again, to account for the resources being used on the server, we do now limit 10 concurrent users. And it's important to recognize that they're concurrent users because if you, say, share accounts between users, which is fine as long as they don't get on at the same time, you potentially will have someone get kicked off when another person logs in with that same account. And again, this is just to account for the resources that are being used on the server. So 10 concurrent users for your organization with the base license fee, and then you can purchase additional users. You just contact us about that, and we'll kind of handle that on a case-by-case basis. Our objective with any of the limits we imposed was not to necessarily be restrictive. We see that 10 users is more than enough for most cities and organizations using
Yeah,
CityWater.
and in my experience, even large systems, that's plenty of concurrent users.
Right. So again, we can, if that becomes a problem, we can reevaluate that. But at this point, it's 10 users. Good question. So another question we have is, how's my data protected when using CityWater? So this is a good question because with anything that's on the web, data security is an important thing to consider. So for one, CityWater uses up-to-date versions of all software to ensure that we have security patches installed and that we're covered when it comes to the latest threats. Any data that is accessed in CityWater, it can only be accessed by a logged-in user, meaning someone with a registered account. And furthermore, the only people that are able to access your specific model are the people who have accounts in your organization on CityWater. And as administrators, or you can have administrators of your organization that can control who has access to what and what permissions they have access to. We have the ability to assign users as only viewers, meaning they are not able to upload or modify any models or add any data to your organization. You can just essentially use and view the data. Or you can have administrators. The other thing, I guess, that's somewhat related to this is we do preserve the integrity of the original model you upload. So when users are running scenarios, for example, rather than modify that base model, we essentially make a copy of it and run the scenario on there. So the base model is never changed and always keeps its integrity.
Yeah, and then the users, their scenarios that they create are
they're isolated.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an important point. We want to make it as easy as possible to access the data, but we also put some safeguards in there to make sure that only people who you want to have access can access the data. Okay, so we got a question. Will current users need to switch over in the fall when this comes out? That is a good question. So as of today, and actually we rolled the new pricing model out a few months ago, any new customers will need to use the new pricing model. Any existing customers will switch over on their next billing period. So not necessarily in fall, but whenever you receive your next bill, it will be based on the new pricing model. That's a good question. Okay, another question we have is, can you help us get started or get our model on CityWater? And yes, we certainly can help you do that. Both Steve at Hansen Allen Luce provides consulting services and helps people with their models. If you already work with Steve, he can help you get your model on CityWater. We at Aquaveo also can do some consulting or have our technical support help you get your model onto CityWater.
Right. So this is the key to, I guess, how I use CityWater. I use it to help my clients by updating the model and then delivering the updated model so that anybody in their system can use that. So that's how I use CityWater.
Excellent. And that's actually a good point. One of the packages that we have, I'll just bring over the pricing again, is called Client Account Management. It's what used to be our enterprise license, essentially. If you are a consulting firm interested in CityWater, you can purchase the Client Account Management package. This allows you to manage your own clients, meaning create organizations for them, upload models for them, update models for them. And Steve used this mode, I guess, this feature, to be able to rapidly iterate between his customers on model updates and new models that he's developing for them. So I just wanted to point that out. And while we're on that note, since there has been a little bit of a naming change, we do have now an enterprise option. As I mentioned before, what used to be the enterprise license is now this client account management add-on. The new enterprise option is for organizations that feel that they need something a little more than a hosted service. Say, for example, they want to have CityWater hosted on their own servers. This is meant to be more of the exception than the rule, but we have considered this, and we are interested if there is someone in that situation where they don't think they'd be able to host their data on our server, but would rather host it themselves. We can discuss that, and we just have you contact us. Okay, so that's all the questions that we received. And that's all we have for our presentation. I just want to thank you for joining us today. I know some of you are probably on your lunch hour, but we appreciate you coming to hear the latest on CityWater. Again, if you have any questions, I'd encourage you to either send me or Steve an email, or you can send it to info@aquaveo.com. And I'd also encourage you to check out our website and look at the pricing calculator to see how much CityWater would be under the new pricing model, especially for current customers. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.